Hello there and welcome. We finally arrived to Module 4. I know has been some delays and you guys are so excited to get into the psychotherapy and related theories. My name is Dr. Lopez and I am so happy that you're here with us today. So, this specific training, Erikson, is the reason why a lot of people get the questions wrong. But pay attention. We'll be going through this module slowly, and I will show you a technique. Well, in fact, I borrowed this technique from someone that's called the PEG system. We'll go through the PEG system in this module, and you will never forget the Erikson stages. Stay tuned. Let's go and learn about Erikson. And I promise you, if you take your time to watch this video slowly and write it down this information, you might get three, four questions on the test on this simple training with MP exam coach. So let's go ahead and get started. So this is all about Erikson and related theories, right? So let's go. As usual, we are learning on micro content, small videos that will help you to keep all the information learned. And don't forget to download your PDF that comes along with our classes. This one is the Erikson stage, right? So, what is the Erikson stages? Well, there are 8 stages, okay? And I'm going to show you a technique to remember the ages related to Erikson, okay? Well, let's start by saying that the age here is rounded. Some resources out there will give you different ages, different groups, right? The conflicts are all the same, the outcome they are all the same, right? But I'm gonna show you the age, how you can use the age to your advantage, because it's unlikely that the ANCC will throw a different age. So by knowing the ages alone, you are able to define the conflict, right? Whether it's trust versus mistrust and so on. So let's start with the ages. Pay attention to this, and I really hope you write it down because if you do so, you are able to get all your questions right. Remember, on this training alone might be a 3, 4 questions. I don't know how many, but it's a very important. Think about it. We learned about Erikson stage back in nursing school, right? It's a very important theory, right? In psychology that we can actually use it in practice. So, starting with the age, okay, infancy, birth to one. Okay, I'm rounding here because some books might say 1 year and 8 months, some might say even two. But let's round into one to make it simpler for test purpose. So, infancy, right? So, on the left hand corner, I want you to write it down 2 plus, okay, next to infancy on your piece of paper right now. Don't delay. And you'll see if we do math on Erickson's stage, it makes it a lot easier to find out the age and to get the question right only by knowing the age alone. So write it down 2 plus and write it down next to infancy 1, 0 to 1. Okay. You wrote down 2 plus next to infancy. So 2 plus 1 is the comes down when you add 2 plus 1, it comes down to early infancy, which is 1 to 3. So in the first stage there, trust with mistrust, you're going to write 2 plus. So you know that the next stage now, autonomous versus chain, will be 2 plus 1 equals to the last year of the next stage, which will be autonomous versus shame and doubt. The next stage there on the left hand side, you're going to write 2 times 2, right? So you are going again to multiply 2 times 3, and it will lead you to the end of the next stage, which is the preschoolers. And here, in this case, is initiative versus guilt. Okay, so like as you can see, 3 to 6. Now, following the same system, again times 2, 2 times 6 equals to 12. Okay, now ends at the last age of industry versus inferiority, super high yield. Mark this down. Now, the next one will be 8 plus the last year of industry versus inferiority. And then 8 plus 12 equals to 20, which equals to the last year of identity versus role confusion. As you can see, if I add 8 to 12 equals to 20 years old, and identity versus confusion is 12 to 20 years old. The next stage here, we're going to add 15. So 15 plus 20, right, equals to 35, which is the last year of intimacy versus isolation, 25 to 35. And then it comes to adulthood, middle adulthood, which is generativity versus stagnation. Okay, in this one you don't have to write a age there because you already finished at 65. So 65 and older is another super high yield stage, which is ego, integrity versus despair. And just like that, if you do 2 plus 2 times 2 times plus 8 plus 15 plus 30, if you memorize just that, you will get to the age group. Okay, I know it sounds a little bit complicated, but if you trust this process, I know you will get this question right. I know you will. You write this down a few times and they will work for you on your benefit very easily. So follow this process. At the end, I'm going to show you a video, and this video will put everything together. For now, all I want to do is write it down, 2 plus, and the conflict on the other hand, just like as it is on this presentation. Okay, trust this process. I promise you, it's a little bit of a work up front, but it will be so worth it when you get those test questions correctly. And as I mentioned, for Erikson stage, age it's super important. So let's start off with our first stage, which is trust versus mistrust, right? Is 0 to 1. Again, this is for test purpose, and we're kind of rounding the age here. Trust versus mistrust. In this stage, the baby really wants to feel secure, right? And if there is a success development on this stage, the the outcome is trust. The child feels safe and secure in the world and trust the caregiver. Failure, in the other hand, is not the best outcome, right? If you have a failure on trust versus mistrust, there is fear, a belief that the world is inconsistent and unpredictable. Okay, so 0 to 1 is infancy, trust versus mistrust. Moving on to the next group, it's early childhood. Early childhood. Think about the baby now between 2 to 3 years old. This is autonomy versus shame and doubt. Autonomy versus shame and doubt. Successful in this stage means that the personal control over physical skills, the baby is trying to walk around, right? The child is trying to walk around, finding things, falling, touching, and able to wander around the world. And one of very important outcomes is sense of control, that he or she can explore the world, and it does this through body training, right? Able to do body training, they feel accomplished. On the other hand, If the baby is not able to explore and is constrained, they will feel self doubt and shame. Okay? So, autonomy in this early childhood, allowing the child to explore the world and finding things on their own is important, right? This is when they start like, okay, I can do things. So, moving on to late preschool. Now we're at 3 to 6 years old. This is initiative versus guilt. Initiative versus guilt, right? So self-started, able to initiate activity. So this is more of a development sense towards the last age and now become more advanced, able to do things, can do things, self-directed behavior, right? So now failure to do so, they'll feel guilt, unable to accomplish their task. And here, initiative versus guilt, the age group is 3 to 6 years old. As I mentioned, age is so very important because you can get the question along correctly by knowing the age group. So put a little bit of extra time on this training here on module 4 so that you can get those questions correct. As we're moving on to the school age, industry versus inferiority, 6 to 12 years old, right? Friends and classmates are so important in this group. And I see this right now in my own personal life. As we moving on, we have different jobs. Right now, I am in a different location in the world because I accepted a position and we had to move. My daughter is 12 years old. Back where we lived in Maryland, we had great community. Every weekend we went to the friend's house and it was always out and about and exploring the world. And my daughter made very strong connection. When we moved here now, in the last 6 months, initially it was so rough for her because friends and school and the people that she had developed a relationship with, she was taken away apart, right? Thank goodness now we are back on our track and she able to find friends. So thinking about this stage, industry versus inferiority, okay? 6 to 12. See, here in this group, friends and classmates and schoolwork, it's so very important. Why? Because if they are able to bond, if they are able to accomplish tasks, they feel industrious, right? Industrious. If they don't, if they are excluded and unable to bond with others and feel part of a community, they feel inferiority. Okay. So processing this stage of industries versus inferiority happens through schoolwork, projects, friendships to develop a sense of a pride and accomplishment. On the other hand, if they feel less competent than their peers, you know what would happen? It would lead to a sense of inferiority. Okay? Very important group. I would mark down this stage, the school age that we just mentioned, industry versus inferiority. Okay. As we're moving on, the child now is getting more independency. They become adolescents, the trouble years, right? For some. So this is identity. They develop their identity or they may get confused. This is age of 12 to 20. So here, there is a personal sense of identity. Who am I? Right? Am I able to hang out with a certain group of people and respect them, although knowing that who I am? Or do I have to mesh with a gang in order to feel part of something, right? So here, personal sense of identity is the key, right? Able to see oneself as a unit within their own values, with their own values and personality, right? Failure leads to confusion about one's identity in life. Identity versus confusion, super high yield as well. Mark this down, 12 to 20 years old. As we moving on, we get into intimacy versus isolation. Early adulthood between 20 to 35 years old. Now it's about love, right? It's about love, committed relationship, and love. Are you able to stay in a relationship, have trust in the relationship, and devote your time to the relationship, or not? Which is the breakdown of the relationship leading to failure, right? Do you know somebody that can't just commit and they cannot stay in a relationship, in a job for a very long time? They have to be wandering around, always looking for a greener grass. Well, that might be the reason why, right? They may not have had accomplishment, completed this age group intimacy versus isolation successfully. As we move on, this is the age that I am at, and we looked at maybe most of you guys are at this age. Generativity versus stagnation. So this is the middle adulthood, and by the way, this is I think is the best age group. I'm living my best life, and I hope that you are. And if we do so, when we continue to progress, we get to the next stage and we'll be able to look back in life and say, I did something for the world, I raised my child, and so forth. But let's focus on this stage, genera- generativity versus stagnation. Here we are, 35 to 64 years old, giving talent to others, helping out, or helping people cook, or cooking for the kids. Parent skills, so important this age group. Write this down. Skills, taking care of the kids, feeling that we belong in the family. We are not only thinking about ourselves, but we have a sense of community. Super important, okay? If you don't accomplish this task properly, we just might feel selfishness, right? Only worried about one's personal gain and not caring for anybody else, not caring for the community, not caring for our children and so forth. So it's super important as well. As we arrive to the next stage, this is integrity versus despair. And this is the age 65 and plus, right? The 65 and plus. Here, successful accomplishment looks like this: looking back in life and feeling satisfied with their own outcome, you know, doing a reflection. Well, I'm 70 years old, or 65 plus. I raised my children. I got a great job, and I am able and okay if I go today because I done what I had to do in this world, right? Acceptance over death and a sense of integrity, right? Integrity. So failure is unhappiness with life and accomplishment leading to despair. Think of this way, right? So if someone was very selfish in the previous stage, generativity versus stagnation, right? And they worked. They made all the money in the world, and that's fine and dandy. And they feel everything is about themselves and so forth, personal gains, and they get here to the next stage, right? And feel like Jesus, you know, I made all this money, and I am unhappy. I am unhappy because I don't feel that I was in this world in order to accomplish bigger things. I was looking out only for myself, right? And that is the despair. That's where the integrity versus despair sets in, and they feel unable to feel joy in this stage, depression, and so forth. So now, since we kind of learned a little bit about this, so what if we can do a check on learning here? Right? Let me raise this so you can see it better. Okay. Here we have a 25 years old woman with a history of social anxiety that comes to your outpatient clinic for a follow up appointment related to her dating struggles. Well, that's already give you a cue. She's 25 and she's dating. During the assessment, she tearfully says, I haven't been able to find romantic partner. I worry that I will never experience true love and connection. I want to feel loved, appreciated for who I am. Which of the following Erikson stages the patient most likely struggling with? Is it integrity versus despair? Right? Is it integrity? This is generativity versus stagnation. Or is it C, intimacy versus isolation? Or D, identity versus role confusion? Remember, let's say you didn't know. This one is fairly easy, right? As we get started, we start with easy questions, get you warmed up for the harder ones that are to come. So let's say you didn't know any of this, but you knew the age. So if you look at the age 25 years old, you could go directly to answer number C. Okay? And this is why is this if you spend a little bit of time memorizing the age group, it will lead you to the right question. Most of the time, this stage, the age is very important. So memorize the age, even if you don't know what comes in that age group, just by memorizing the age and associating with the stages, you'll get these questions right. So here the answer Erikson stage description, intimacy versus isolation. And don't forget, at the end, I'm going to show you a video that will help you memorize all this fast in a hurry and in a way that you will never forget it. Okay. So intimacy versus isolation. Focus on developing the ability to form close, mutual relationship marked by love, commitment, and intimacy. Difficulty in this stage can lead to the feeling of isolation, loneliness, and the fear of commitment, which aligns with the patient's concern here in this question. Let's move on and do another check on learning. Okay, so here we have a 15 years old boy named Mark, raised in a dysfunctional family, struggles with trusting others, craving a sense of belonging and loyalty he lacks at home. He joins a gang, bad choice, right? Finding a substitute family that fulfills those needs. However, he becomes intolerant of a difference and engage in aggressive act against members of a rival gangs. Considering Erickson's stage of psychosocial development, which stage is Mark most likely struggling with? Is this trust versus mistrust? Is this identity versus role confusion? Is it intimacy versus isolation? Or is it integrity versus despair? Again, associate the age is your first step on solving Erikson stages. When you associate the age, you can go directly to the answer choice if you can match it correctly. But here we have some cues, right? There is mistrust in others. There is a sense of belonging, loyalty that he lacks at home, so therefore he joins the gang. So he's having a identity versus role confusion, right? So let's see if that's the correct answer. So the answer here is identity versus role confusion. And here why. The stage descriptions identifies identity versus role confusion in adolescents, 15 to 20 years old. And we said what age Mark was? He was 15 years old, right? So right there, you could get this question right by knowing the age. So 15 to 20 years old. It involves exploring different roles, values, beliefs to forge a unique identity. In Mark's situation, while Mark expressed difficulty with trust versus mistrust, again, if you had no idea and you didn't attend this class and you hear trust versus mistrust, you look back at this answer here, letter A, trust and mistrust, right? It says the gang because you want to be part of it. You could possibly pick this answer if you didn't know, right? The trust versus mistrust is 0 to 1 because the answer choice here and the stem of the question has trust, right? But now that we attend this class, so we know trust versus mistrust belongs to the infancy, right? 0 to 1. So back to the rationale here. While Mark experienced difficulties with trust versus mistrust, join the gang isn't solely about that. He actively seeks a sense of belonging and explore the role of being part of a group, right? Aligning with identity versus role confusion. And again, another way that you could qualify this question is by applying the age group. He's 15, um, identity versus role confusion, 12 to 20 years old. Now, I know this is a lot of numbers and a lot of math, and I promise the next slide will clarify this, or the next upcoming slides will clarify this with a quick video that it's a little bit, about 6 minutes or so. But if you take your time to understand it, you will ace your test. At least those questions about Erickson, you'll get it correctly. So for now, let's prep for the video. Okay. Can you memorize this 8 little names? Tell tell yourself one is bun, two is shoe, three is a tree, four is a dinosaur, five is a dive, six is a steak, seven is heaven, eight is in a plate. I know there is some resistance to memorize, there is some resistance to learn, but can you memorize these 8 names? Let's do this. This is recall test. Okay. One's a bun, two is a shoe, three is a tree, four is a dinosaur, five is a dive, six is a steak, seven is heaven, and eight is a plate. Okay. Memorize these 8 um, associations that we are going through. Now, Eric, the age, we said the first one it was 2, and then it was times 2 plus 8, 15 plus 30. Okay, all right. If you really want to be high speed and really get every single question correct, know the associated virtues, right? And you can memorize this by how poco fus cow. How poco fus cow. Okay. And here I am now going to put the first age, which is a 2, right? The first numbers on the left on the first chart, which is a 2, with the H, how poco fu cow, the H, which stands for hope. The next one would be a 2 plus, and is the W, which represents the will. Then the next age there is going to be times 2, which will put for the P for poco, for the P for poco. And the next one will be the 8, which stands for the C there for competency. Now, the next number will be 15. And if you look at full, is F for fidelity. Then the next number will be a 30, and is still the L at the end of full, followed by the care and the wisdom. Okay, I know it's a whole lot, but if you put a little bit time right now, it will get together. Everything will kind of get together as we move on in this training. So here we have it. Okay, so first stage, I want to recall what we just learned here. Remember, recall it's after 5 minutes, right? Part of your MMSC. So here we start with trust versus trust is infancy. We move on to the early childhood, autonomy versus shame and doubt. And then we move on to the next is initiative versus guilt, followed by school age, industry versus inferiority, super high yield. Then we have the adolescence years, integrity versus role confusion. We talked about Mark here, followed by young adults, intimacy versus isolation, love is in the air. Then the best age group of all, the middle adulthood, generality versus stagnation, and then finally we get to maturity, ego integrity versus despair. Now the best part. Let's see what how to put everything together. Okay, so check this out. This is actually great. Hopefully, you are able to hear my video well. So let's get started. Okay.
In this edition of freetestprep.net, we are going to learn Erikson's 8 stages of development with mnemonic tricks. The trick we're going to use today is called the PEG system. The PEG system basically uses a figurative code to represent an image and a number. For example, 1 is represented by a bun because they rhyme, 2 a shoe, 3 a tree, 4 a dinosaur, 5 a diver, 6 sticks, 7 heaven, and 8 plate. You can kind of see how the rhyming helps remember it. So when we think about the number 1, we say 1 is bun. Well, 1 is bun. Number 1 in the theory is trust versus mistrust. So we need to have a way so that when we see this bun in our minds, that we see trust or mistrust. Well, if we picture the bun as rusty, notice how the word rust is in trust. So when we think of our bun and we see the rust on it, we say rust, trust versus mistrust. That's kind of how the PEG system works. So for number 2, we have a shoe. Number 2 is autonomy versus shame. Well, I see the word auto in there. So what if we pictured this shoe with some wheels on it looking like a car? Well, that gives us the first one pretty good. So when we think of a 2 and a shoe, we have a shoe that's a car, autonomy. Now we need shame. Well, shame sounds like the name Shane. Well, let's just put Shane in that car. Use any Shane that you know. And now we have autonomy versus shame. We think of a shoe that's an automobile with Shane inside of it. Number 3 is initiative versus guilt. Well, 3, if you remember, is a tree. So what can we do with this tree to use initiative or guilt? Well, initiative starts with in. Well, why don't we use Holiday Inn? Put that behind the tree in your mind. Now, guilt. Guilt rhymes with quilt. So let's take this quilt and wrap it around the tree. So now when we think 3, we think 3 is a tree. And when we see this tree in our mind, we will see a Holiday Inn behind it and a quilt wrapped around it. In and guilt. Initiative and guilt. Number 4 is industry versus inferiority. And remember, number 4 is a dinosaur. Well, industry has the word dust in it. So let's have our dinosaur standing on some dust. We also need to picture something that's inferior. Well, we have a dinosaur. Let's just make him look inferior. So we have an inferior dinosaur standing on some dust. 4, dinosaur, standing on dust, industry, and he's inferior. Number 5 is identity versus identity confusion. Now, number 5 is dive. So we need something to attach to the word dive that's going to help bring the word identity up. Well, ident. Picture the diver diving into a car and denting it. We also have identity confusion, so we can use the same one for both. Number 6 is intimacy versus isolation. 6 is sticks. This is probably the easiest one. Just picture a couple of sticks kissing and a third stick left off to the side. So 6 is sticks. We see the sticks and then we see them kissing. Number 7 is generativity versus stagnation. Well, 7 is heaven. So generativity, that has the word generate in it. So let's picture a generator versus stagnation. Well, let's put a stag there. Stag turning the generator. So now when we think 7 is heaven, we picture some stag running a generator in heaven. The final one, number 8, integrity versus despair. 8 is a plate. Well, let's put some grits on those plates so we have some integrity versus despair. Let's put a pear there. So now when we think of number 8 in our plates, we put some grits on the plate and a pear right there, and we have it. So, do you have it down now? Maybe, maybe not. Well, let's do a quick review. 1 is a bun. The bun is rusty. Rust, mistrust. 2 is a shoe. Picture the shoe with wheels, autonomy versus shame. 3 is a tree. Well, what's behind that tree? Holiday Inn and the quilt that reminds us of guilt. Number 4 is a dinosaur standing on some dust, industry. And the dinosaur is looking pretty inferior. So industry versus inferiority. Number 5. Well, we have a diver for 5. The diver's dented a car. So identity versus identity confusion. 6 is sticks. What are those sticks doing? They're smooching. So we have some intimate sticks. And another stick out there on the side. 7 is heaven. Well, what's going on in heaven? The lights are out and the stag is running the generator. Generativity versus stagnation. Finally, number 8. 8's a plate. What's on the plate? Well, grits, integrity, and despair. There's a pear on that plate. Well, that's it. That's the PEG method for Erikson's 8.
All right, guys. So I hope you enjoyed this. I know there will be a lot of resistance, a lot of things you memorize, but think about this, right? A lot of people are not passing their test by 1, 2, 3 questions, right? If you take your time now to memorize this, most importantly, if you take your time now to understand the bigger concept, I know this was a little bit of longer videos. I don't like to do longer videos. I like micro learning, which is the core of NP exam coach, right? So if you take the time now, you will memorize this and you will get those tests correctly. Take for example, I memorized the PEG system on this by this course here that we just learned from almost 20 years ago, and I never forget the Erikson stage. Obviously now I do have a little bit more intel since we went to school. I went to school and I learned more about Erikson. But in my initial career, I had to memorize Erikson stages. So here it is, right? We learned about it today. Thank you for being with us. My name is Dr. Lopez. I'll see you on our next training. Bye bye. So long.